How do you prepare yourself for jobs that don't even exist yet? Edmond O'Neal with Northeast Indian Works joins us on the Midwest Flourish podcast. I'm your host, Rick Farrant, and today on this edition of the Midwest Flourish, we have Edmond O'Neal, who is the president and CEO of Northeast Indiana Works, which is the region's workforce development organization. Welcome, Edmond.
Hi, Rick.
Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about, just to get us started, a little bit about Northeast Indiana Works and what it is and what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Northeast Indiana Works is a domestic not-for-profit based out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, but that covers an 11-county region in the northeast corner of the state that provides workforce development services both to individuals and employers in the region.
And how is it funded?
We're funded through a number of sources. Our main funding source is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, which derives at the Federal Department of Labor and flows through the Indiana Department of Workforce Development. But we also have additional state-level funds, federal funds, and even some philanthropic dollars that support our work.
And that's the term for that act is otherwise known as WIOA. That's what everyone calls it, is WIOA. And that's a significant portion of the funding, right?
Absolutely. It is the bulk of our funding.
Yeah, and it was, I've lost track of this, but it was up for reauthorization at some point. What's the status of that?
So the act is not reauthorized. It is part of the continuing resolution that I affectionately call an omnibus bill, because that's what it feels like. But it is part of, I forgot the number for the CR, but it is the one that is up for vote again in September.
Okay.
And there's a new act actually written into that is called a Stronger Workforce for America's Act that will actually replace WIOA.
Have you been able to look at what that's going to look like? I mean, are there any significant changes that you think would come out of that?
Oh yeah, I've read all 700 pages of it. The most significant change is an occupational skills training requirement. So there's a decent amount of flexibility in the funding that we receive currently just to support regionally determined efforts. With the new act, there is a requirement to expend at least 50% of the funds on occupational skills training, which limits some of the other functions that you can use the funding for.
Yeah, I want to come back to training because I think that's an important part, because I know one of the things Northeast Indiana Works does is it provides access to training in the funds that it gets. But I do want to come back on that. Workforce development is a very complex ecosystem that also involves a lot of other organizations and other sectors, education, economic development, government. How do all those entities work together? And do we have an efficient collaboration among all the entities that are working together?
So you said complex, and I appreciate you for that. Other terms I've heard are fragmented, siloed, think terms like that. So I appreciate you saying complex because it has a positive connotation. I guess I'll start with how we work with other organizations locally first. I think we do a really good job. I think at our local, which for us is a regional level, our 11-county level, we do a really good job of partnering with other human capital or human service entities, our economic development partners, our philanthropic organizations, our education systems, whether that be secondary or post-secondary level, and then our employer partners. I think we do a really good job of convening and working together for the betterment of our community and to pipeline young people and even adults into careers. More so than jobs, into actual careers. I think when you start moving to the state and federal level, it gets more challenging. Some of it is just how things are structured. At the federal level, departments are siloed. They have their own definitions of terms. They have their own outputs and outcomes that they are funding. At the state level, it's very similar because a lot of that funding comes from the federal government or from the General Assembly. So I think they try to work together at the state level, but I think the reality of it is the funding sources are siloed. So it's hard to kind of couple partnership when the origination of the funding isn't meant to be partnered.
Do you think that people outside of the immediate sphere that we're talking about even understand, one, how these pieces work together, or in theory, how these pieces should work together?
No, I 100% believe majority of the people don't. And I think the biggest evidence of that is several years ago, there was a number of media releases that said the state has $1 billion in workforce development funds, which was completely untrue, or at least in the way it was framed. I don't know that everyone ever was able to prove that there was $1 billion in funding, but what they also left out was that funding is very siloed, very restricted, and actually in some cases has some very prescriptive functions that go along with it, that aren't necessarily responsive to communal or local needs or working together with other partners.
Yeah, I want to get something in really quick, and then we're going to get to the whole training and the upskilling part of it. But it used to be, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that when we looked at workforce development, careers, jobs, training, we focused first on the people and second on the employers. And that has changed, hasn't it? And maybe you can talk a little bit about why it was important to put employers first.
Yeah. So, I am one of many who believes that, our employer partners set the market. So, the individual people we serve, while they are a customer or a consumer, they are also a product that goes into the market. So, without the employer, there is no market. So, you have to serve the people that create the market to then serve the people that fulfill the needs of the market.
So you mentioned in the new WIOA authorization, where it's going to say 50% of it has to go to occupational skills training. Is that what you said? And I'm going to kind of switch up a little here in the order that we talked about ahead of time. But one of the difficulties that I know personally, being in this space at one time, is that it's very difficult sometimes to get the horses to the water. And so here are you, and it is now, and here if you put this 50% requirement on it, let me pick your brain on how you think we collectively, meaning the whole ecosystem, can do a better job of getting people to get to training, to getting to upskill opportunities, because that can be an enormous challenge.
Well, I think like most things, it is limiting barriers and rewarding positive function. I think COVID actually helped a lot. As funny as that sounds, because it made virtual engagement a norm. Online classes have existed for years. They became much more prevalent and acceptable during and post COVID, which for a number of people made educational attainment more accessible. I don't have to commute somewhere. I can do this, through a laptop or a computer from my home or some other space, because every education institution is not close. We cover 11 counties. There are some rural communities where people would have to commute an hour or more to get to a class somewhere. So I think technology, one, helps a lot. I think we've done a pretty good job of marketing the benefits of lifelong learning. I think people are learning about more career opportunities in Northeast Indiana. For years, we were only manufacturing and healthcare. It was like manufacturing and healthcare, and they are still our dominant industry clusters now. But, we also have emerging clusters in insurance and IT, in defense. There's a number of opportunities that are being promoted to both adults and young people very differently than they historically were. So I think trying to motivate people, trying to spread the word, making sure people understand how much money they can make, going into these fields or promoting and walking along a career pathway is really important. The challenges are what they are. People don't, a number of people, I won't say all people, have no interest in going back to school. We can tell people the benefit of lifelong learning, but the reality of it is some people have it in them and some people don't have an interest.
Well, isn't there, I don't know if it's the right word for it, a cultural or ideological barrier in that we still have a fair number of people out there that want to chart their career or a job the way it used to be, which was you could go into a job and you could have it for 30 or 40 years and the job didn't change, right? And so now we're in a situation where the skills that are needed in jobs are evolving at an extremely fast rate. And that will require people, if they want to stay a step ahead, to become lifelong learners, right?
Absolutely. It's disruption, right? So whether it's technological disruption, operational disruption, these things happen. And especially with technological disruption, it happens pretty quickly. When it does happen, it can completely upend an industry or an employer, thus putting their employee base in turmoil. You're 100% right. As these jobs evolve, the skills necessary to serve in them evolve. Oftentimes, the work that has already been done can serve as a great foundation. But you may have to learn a new skill. You may have to learn how to use a new machine. You may have to learn a new technology that's now a part of the job that wasn't 5 years ago. The days of pull the lever, push the button, drop the screw on the bolt are gone. Machines do that very efficiently and at a lower cost, frankly, for the employer. So now what is needed are people that can do functions that are more order of operation based, or that can program or run said machine or maintenance the machine or monitor it and do something else while the machine is running, if you're looking at the manufacturing space.
Yeah. And then
Healthcare changes. Healthcare evolves every month is the reality of
but
it.
there's also the issue of, or the matter of, there are a lot of terms for it. I call them transferable skills, right? That it would be important for somebody to acquire skills that if the job that they're on falls by the wayside, that they have the kind of skills that they can step into another position, or at least have a foundation for another position.
Right. Absolutely. And those skills are basic skills that I think everyone has known for years. They get rebranded in a different package, but work ethic, timeliness, being punctual, showing up on time, knowing how to work in a group, being courteous to people, understanding that there are expectations of production at work. Unfortunately, some of those skills have gone by the wayside for various reasons. And employers are looking for people who have them and who also can think. I think for a number of years, especially in the manufacturing space, we wanted to produce people that acted like robots but weren't robots. And now we have robots, and we want people that can critically think so they can do the tasks that the robots can't do.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the bigger changes.
Yeah. I did want to mention, I can't remember if you mentioned that at the top of it, that one of the other things Northeast Indiana Works does is oversee the Work One centers, which is something that a lot of people may be familiar with more than they are with Northeast Indiana Works. That's a place that you can go.
I did not mention that.
Okay. Well, now we've mentioned it. Here's one that I'm really fascinated by. I really want to hear your answer to this. So we know that there are jobs that are going to be here in 5 or 10 years that do not exist now.
Correct.
How does a person go about preparing themselves for jobs that don't exist?
Well, I think first they understand, get the best understanding they can of whatever industry they are either currently in or want to work in. So, understand the industry, understand the direction that the industry itself is going. And then the person should give themselves a baseline of transferable skills that we already talked about. And then learn as much as they can about that field. I mean, the reality of what we're talking about is no one is prepared for these new jobs. So it's one of those things that, okay, when disruption happens, there's an even playing field for everyone to become prepared to work in that space. No one is ahead of anyone else. So how much do you know as a baseline? What transferable skills do you have? And what initiative do you take to become one of the people that is skilled in this new space?
But it would be important for people to keep track, right, of what the changes are, to not become complacent. So here we are in 2025. There is a lot of volatility at the federal level. We've had a lot of layoffs. We've had a lot of adjustments, call it whatever you want. But those kinds of changes at that level have a significant impact on organizations across the United States. How can a person ensure that they can hold on to their job when there's so much upheaval going on?
Well, ensure is a strong word. I don't know that anyone can 100% ensure
How can people
that they
increase
will
their
learn
odds
their
that they will be
jobs.
able to keep their job when there's so
Um,
much volatility?
so I think it's the things we already talked about.
Yeah.
Have a good baseline of transferable skills. Be a good employee. Be a good coworker to the people you work with. Understand the direction the market is going. Position yourself to be one of the people that it says, I'm willing to be a lifelong learner. I'm willing to learn how to do the new order of operation or run the new machine or run the new technology or train other people. Like be willing to train, be a the trainer.
Yeah.
Those are how people stay engaged, both from a personal relationship perspective and a professional relationship perspective at their job.
And then, right, networking becomes important too. And very few jobs are landed the old way, right?
Full merit.
Yeah, well, that and newspaper advertisements and some. If you go online, you get plugged in some algorithm that'll kick you out if you have the wrong word in the first 20 or 30 words. What should a person do really quickly to be a good networker so that when somebody has an opening, they can look at you and say, "Hey, I think you should come on board."
Networking is one of those things that happens well before it's needed. You can't wait until you've applied for a job to try to network or socialize yourself with that employer or that employee base. Networking happens every day. So I am naturally an introvert. Most people don't believe that, but I am. I had to learn how to be willing to talk to people I didn't know.
Well, you're doing pretty good today.
I'm trying. I'm trying my best. But it's a skill. It's a skill like any other tangible workforce related skill. So going out, and meeting people, volunteering for certain events, organizations, activities, being involved in trade associations that are related to the field you want to work in, lifelong learning. You meet other people who are interested in the same thing you are. They might also be, connected to an employer that you may be interested in. Um, Going to an employer and asking to do an informational interview or talking to them about what openings they have or what they see as the vision for their company. All of those things are networking opportunities for people to build their network, and also be a part of someone else's network.
One of the key things that's happening regionally, I think actually across the country, is talent pipeline development, and it's something that's happening at younger and younger ages. How have we been doing with that? And because there have been a lot of initiatives, and I think the verdict is out. I really do, as to whether this is having an impact or not. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I've got a lot of thoughts on that, Rick. So my first thought is that talent pipelining is extremely important. I think sometimes we forget though that 75% of the workforce is already in it. So we have to remember to cater to the adults and the existing workforce that happens. But aside from that, the talent pipelining is critical to the future of organizations and our community as a whole. I mean, this is our future tax basis, that we are trying to educate. To determine whether or not it has been successful, I think anecdotally, we all believe things that are going really, really well. We partner amongst the spectrum of employers, of philanthropic agencies, social service agencies, government-funded entities to provide services and plug young people into opportunities that can develop them in a number of ways. Statistically, it becomes a challenging thing to actually report out and say, I can statistically show you that these all the aggregate or cumulative of these pipelining initiatives worked, because worked is a very loose term and not well defined. Because what does it mean for the person? What does it mean for the employer? What does it mean for our community as a whole? But as a person who does some of the work on a daily basis, I think we do a really good job. I mean, there are a number of examples any of us could go to talk about initiatives that we could pull out real examples of real people who have transitioned from being a child in an education system and promoted themselves through a career. I mean, even some up to very important executives in organizations in our community.
You've been at this for quite a while, workforce development. And maybe you've mentioned some of the changes, but what are the significant changes that you've seen? And to the extent that you can focus more heavily on as it impacts people or it impacts companies.
So I've seen the pendulum completely swing. I moved to Indiana in February of 2008. My role kind of changed to a more leadership-based role in 2009, 2010. And that obviously was not a great time economically in the United States as a whole, especially in Indiana, because the manufacturing industry was so heavily hit during the recession. I actually worked in an American Job Center, which we call the Work One centers here in Indiana at that time. And there were literally lines wrapped around the lobby and outside of people who were dislocated and in need of assistance, which is a complete 180 from where we are now, where there are employers in need of people and in need of assistance to source and candidates to their
Yeah, yeah,
jobs. So I've literally seen the pendulum swing from one side all the way to the other.
yeah. Yeah, it has been changed. I actually remember some of those lines too. Like
Absolutely.
1,000 or more people around the block at the center.
No, it was I had never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I hope I don't ever see anything like it again.
So I'm guessing that workforce development was not something when you were, this is kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know that I want to use that cliche, but that's kind of what I'm saying. As you are maturing, even as a teenager, this was not, oh, I'm going to go into workforce development. Am I correct?
You are.
Yeah. What do you want to be?
So
What do you want to be when you grew up?
it did change. So I'll start when I was 6 years old. My mother loves to tell the story. Because you asked every first grader what they want to be when they grow up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the kids went down the line: fireman, policeman, doctor, lawyer, all the things. They get to Edmond, and my response was, I want to be rich.
Interesting.
There was no profession, no career. Just want to be rich.
Yeah, and the reason, before you go on with that, the reason why you wanted to be rich was what? Why was that important to you?
I don't know. Like, very honestly, as a 6-year-old, I probably wanted to buy toys, or something. Who knows what
Okay.
6-year-old me wanted? But as I got older, and grew up a little, I thought I was going to be a professional football player. Truthfully, I was a pretty good football player in high school. I played football collegiately,
At
um,
Stanford.
at
We should
Stanford.
mention at
I
Stanford.
did attend Stanford for undergrad.
Yeah.
And I thought I would be a football player. I wasn't quite as good as I thought I was. And I also had an injury that prevented me from even pursuing that. At that point, honestly, I thought I would become a business owner. I thought I have an interest. I like classic cars. Like, that is kind of one of my hobbies. So I thought I would do something with cars, whether it was sell them, work on them, something in that vein. I ended up working in higher education out of undergrad. And I did that until I moved to Indiana, as essentially a trailing spouse. And I switched careers, frankly, to move here because my wife was already, well, she was my fiance at the time, was here working for the basketball team that had just started, which was the Mad Ants back then. So I kind of fell into the work because I needed a job so I could be with my fiance when I was trying to move from Texas.
Yeah.
So that is literally how I got into this space.
Yeah. And how's the rich thing going?
I'm working on it.
You're working on
I'm
it.
still working on it.
Like that's still a part of it though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. So what do you see as we kind of wrap this up, what do you see as the future of the workforce? And I know that's really hard because there's so many changes, but what do you see as the future? I'm relatively young. Maybe I'm just out of college. Maybe I just got a certificate. What do I have to look forward to in the next 30, 40, 50 years?
Uh, oof, it's a long time, Rick. I think,
All right. Just say in the next 10, 15 years.
for probably to be a little bit of the pendulum swinging again.
Yeah.
In times of economic downturn, which our economy has just been running so efficiently for the last 10 years or so, it has to correct slightly. So there will be a little tighter times. Usually during an economic correction, employers are more stringent on what they're looking for. Right now, that they're more flexible because they're like, look, I need people. I just need people, and I need good people with skills. When the labor pool is bigger than the employer demand, the interest becomes more specific. I need a person who can do this specific thing because there's more people to pick from. So I think we've seen a lot of young people have come up in a time where they've got a number of options. I don't know that they'll have as many options in the next 10 years. I think some of that will scale back significantly.
So here's a question we didn't talk about ahead of time. This is the last question I have for you. And you can give it more than one answer, but let's not have a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
What is the most important piece of either life or work advice that you were ever given? And it could be one or it could be two, something that somebody told you.
So for both life and work, my friend's father told me in undergrad that the best position you can put yourself in is one where you as an individual have options. So always strive to ensure that you equip yourself with the tools and the talent to give you options to make your own decisions versus people making decisions for you.
Yeah, and you sort of did that because they always talk about, especially with athletes. I mean, you thought you'd be a professional football player. What I tell people, it's not it's someone else came up with it, but have a plan B.
Absolutely.
Always have a plan B.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you, Edmond. Maybe we'll have you back, but it's been a wonderful half hour. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being our guest.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Midwest Flourish podcast. Want to dig deeper or get involved? Head to marketingthemidwest.com to explore how we can work together to empower your community to flourish. Let's keep the Midwest momentum going and shape the future of our region together.